G'day guys, Daniel from the Bloke with the Beard here, our first proper video for our channel. I thought I'd just get straight to the point, not beat around the bush. Today we are going to talk about suicide. That's how serious we are talking and using the word suicide on social media. We're not going to beat around the bush. This is a really important topic that's really close to my heart. And the first thing I want to sort of talk about is, well, what is suicide? And the reality is, suicide is the act of intentionally causing one's own death. That's the Wikipedia article. When we go to the Australian Institute of Health and Wellbeing, they tell us that suicide is an action taken to deliberately end one's own life. While intentional self-harm is deliberately causing physical harm to oneself, but not necessarily with the intention of dying. And I think intentional self-harm flies under the radar a little bit when we talk about what is mental health and what can it lead to. I'd love to do a video in the future about intentional self-harm, but today I want to focus on suicide. And why is it so serious for us? Part of the reason I'm passionate is that for people under 44, in particular 15 to 44, it's the leading cause of death. Reports say around about a third of all deaths for people 15 to 44 are suicide. That's a kind of a scary statistic. It's definitely not one we should be taking lightly. When I find the right page, there we go. We see that the rate of suicide, the further you get away from a city, increases dramatically. So when we look at population per 100,000, the Australian Institute of Health and Wellbeing tells us that around 15 people per 100,000 people will pass from suicide. Now, this is showing the male data. And before we get to the female, you just see the difference between remote and very remote. Sitting somewhere between 30 and 35 people per 100,000. That's a little bit higher than 15,000. When we go to look at females, it's much lower numbers, and the difference between major and outlying is very different. And you can see that we're only talking between 4.5 to 8 people in these categories. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that women will try to suicide more often than men. Some places will tell you it's about 3 times higher, the amount of attempts. Why is that important? Because females feel the struggles that men do as well. And at no point do I mean to undermine or understipulate the effect of mental illness and so on females, because they suffer, and like I said, they're more likely to try than guys are. And I'm not going to go into methodology. I'm not going to go explain why in this video, but that's how things go. Now, I am just trying to, there we go. So, what about mental health? What about mental illness? Well, 3,307 Australians died by suicide in 2024. We will always be 2 to 3 years behind in suicide statistics because it takes a year or two to actually figure out if a death was suicide. Over 7 million Australian adults are close to someone who has died by suicide or attempted suicide. Half of our young people under 25 feel the effects of suicide. Well, we were talking about how it's the leading cause of death for under 44s, but it's the 16th leading cause of death overall. That's kind of scary. Males are 3 times more likely to die by suicide. And Indigenous Australians die by suicide at a rate twice higher than non-Indigenous. That rate's high as well for those who identify as LGBTQ+. Now, here's the interesting fact that a lot of people kind of don't realize. Something like 76% of men internationally, when they suicide, they don't have a pathologically diagnosable mental illness. That's kind of really scary to think about. And we're going to go into that in a little bit. But first, I want to have a look at the languages we use when we talk about suicide. It's really important to me, this particular conversation, because there's a disconnect between what I'm taught to say as a mental health professional versus the language that my clients use, my friends use, what I use. And it's really important to understand that difference. A mental health professional might say they died by suicide. You and I would say they took their own life. They might say suicide ideation. You and I would say we're having dark thoughts. At risk of self-harm. You know, when I'm doing clinical notes, that's what I'm typing in. Up here, they're not in a good headspace right now. One of my favorite phrases in mental health world, and it's so ambiguous, is acute distress. What the heck does that mean? I mean, for us, it means they're under the pump. They're at breaking point. You know, and for us, we might say we're all over the place emotionally. They're going to say emotional dysregulation. Here's a bit of a list here. This is what I've been reading from. This isn't an exhaustive list. This isn't the be all and end all of language. And depending on the client, I will use different words altogether. If my client is talking about necking themselves, I'm not going to say, are you thinking about attempting suicide? Oi, what are you going to do to neck yourself? Well, I use the language they use because I can't do that clinical stuff, to be honest. So as I talk today, I'll try and use real language, but the mental health training drills words into you. So we've talked about suicide rates. We've talked about the rates that men and women die from suicide, taking their own lives. We've talked about the difference in country and rural. We've talked about the difference in where we live, who we identify as. But why? Why do we suicide? If 76% of men don't have a pathological diagnosable illness, why? Why are they doing it? Let me put it to you like this. And a lot of this comes from personal experience when I say this. I want you to put yourself in that position. I want you to imagine being in a heap of trouble at work. You just can't get anything right. Your clients are going off to another company. You get home and all your wife does is complain and whinge at you. The car broke down, you got to find money for that. The kids need money for school camp. Everything's going wrong. Nothing's going right. You look around and realize that you are the common factor in all these problems. Kind of makes sense if you weren't there, the problems would go away. You got a decent life insurance. The wife will get a nice payout. She'll be able to fix the car. She'll be able to send the kids to camp. And yeah, there's going to be a brief period of mourning, don't get me wrong. But, you know, she's a looker. She'll find someone really quick. Actually, it makes sense you're not here. It makes sense that you leave. And, you know, that's a personal experience, and that's a very similar conversation that I've had with so many male clients, even with a couple of the ladies. But that is the situation for them. And you might recognize that situation yourself. You might see that situation in someone you are friends with. You might see that some situation in a family member. Might it won't be the exact same, but you get what I'm saying. So, what do you do? You take your own life. That's the answer. And a lot of people will go, "Oh, yeah, but that's really selfish. What about their wife? What about their family? What about their children? What about the heartache and the suffering?" Well, the person in this situation, this is selfishness. I don't know if I got that word right. But that for them is the opposite of being selfish. That is being merciful. Because removing the problem from their lives means that they can continue on, they can grow, they can blossom. That's what it is for these guys and girls. That's not selfish for them. They're releasing their family and friends. Is it the right viewpoint? I'm not going to go into that because I'm not going to talk about the philosophy. I'm talking about what's going on up here. Why are they wanting to take their own lives? What are these dark thoughts? And when we say they're not in a good headspace, what does that look like? This is one example. But it's an example we see a lot. Especially when I'm talking to the guys out on properties who, outside of this, don't have a diagnosable mental illness. There was a stat I was trying to find before. Let me see if I've got it here somewhere. Because there it is. This is regarding men's mental health. Only 35% of men would seek help. Only 35% of men. And when we start talking about country regions like Roma, Charleville, Morven, St. George, Mungandai, Thargomindah, I don't have proof on this, but I firmly believe that number decreases dramatically. Because out here we don't see mental health the same way we do in the city. One of the phrases there, workplace stress and burnout. So when I'm talking to clients for the first time, or I'm talking to someone who sounds like they might be interested in having a yarn, that's what we talk about. We talk about that stress and burnout. We talk about stress. I don't talk about mental health. I don't talk about anxiety. I don't talk about depression. And again, I keep talking about men, but it applies to women too. I talk about men because that's my passion. That is the people I love to help. I still have female clients. About a third of my clients at the moment are female. But these dark headspace that we talk about, this taking their own lives, dark thoughts, being all over the place emotionally. That's what's going on in these guys' minds. My job as a mental health professional is to help them find alternative ways to see the world. Cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, says we talk about reframing. How do we change the way we see the world? Instead of the glass being half empty, we see it as half full. It's a pretty cliche analogy, but it's one that everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? So that's why we talk about this. Why? And, depression and anxiety absolutely play a role. Neurodivergency like ADHD, autism, even things like dyslexia, dysgraphia, they contribute to the rates of suicide because the way the brain's working is fried. It's cooked. Depression, anxiety, it's not just a mental thing. It's a physiological thing. The chemical balance in your brain is all over the place. And when that chemical balance is all over the place, we think things that we wouldn't normally think. We think about how much we are bringing down the world. We think about how crappy we are. we think about what a worthless bag of poop we are. So, there are all sorts of reasons why someone will suicide. I've only gone through a couple of examples. I've gone through someone who might not have a diagnosable mental illness. We've talked about depression, anxiety type approach. If any of this is ringing a bell, feel free to get in contact with us. We'll have our details in the comments. We'll have our details at the end of the video as well. So, what are some warning signs? Well, that's my favorite question. Talking about it. You know, in Country Blokes, we'll say, far out, man. I just want to neck myself at this point. Man, nothing like a 22 through the brain. That's the language. You know, the clinically safe examples I'm supposed to give are, I wish I were dead. I'm going to kill myself. You know, we see further on, increased hopelessness or worthlessness. What does that mean? You know that situation I was explaining before? Everything's gone wrong. The car's broken down. The wife's nagging. The children need to go to camp. It's never going to get better. That's the feeling. I'm the burden. I'm the problem. That's the thought process. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying this is the thought process. Behavioral changes. Sudden changes. You know, if they start withdrawing socially for no particular reason, and it's easy to use prominent people in the community because they're the greatest examples. But when you know your friends and family, you'll see the change yourself. But you get someone who's really active in the community, all of a sudden they're not part of the tennis club anymore. They're not supporting the local show. They're not going down to the drags. They're withdrawing themselves. They're all the things they used to love to do. They're not doing anymore. So, what do we do? Well, we're going to talk about that very shortly. We might even see an increased use of drugs and alcohol. You'll notice that I'm just showing you my notes because I want you to see for yourself. This is a really great example. They're giving away things. That prize 1968 caddy that they've held onto for years, their pride and joy, and all of a sudden they've given it to their mate. They're giving away that 200-year-old polished chess set made out of ivory. For a nerd, it might be giving away their phantom comic book collection. It's usually a good sign that someone's thinking about taking their own life, and they're just, before the will has to be sorted out, they're just distributing their wealth. It's a bit hard to see, but seeking access to lethal means. Out here in the bush, a lot of people have guns. We're never going to know because they've got the guns. You know, in the city, we talk about ropes. Surprise, surprise. We talk about unexpected wanting to access guns. Medication. And I'm trying really hard not to go on a methodology. I'm trying really hard to not talk about how someone might do the deed. But it's kind of something I have to bring up from time to time in this video. Because that's the reality of suicide. Where there is a suicide ideation, where there is a plan, where those dark thoughts are happening, there's going to be a plan to make it happen. So as much as I'm trying not to talk about it, it's going to come up. Sudden calmness after a period of distress. This is like the biggest warning sign for me. This is the one we see the most. Someone will go from being down and depressive. Someone will go from being really angry, because that's how blokes betray mental illness. That's how blokes show that their brain isn't working right. We get stroppy, grumpy, angry. They go from those downward type of things, emotions that we associate as down, to happy, joyful, calm. That is the biggest sign of a problem. Because what that means is that that person's gone from those thoughts of the world will be better off without me. My wife's going to get a payout. My kids can go to school. My workplace, my boss is going to have a better outcome when I'm gone. They're thinking about, yeah, but taking my own life is bad. To, oh, no, I'm at peace with this. Because a lot of that depressive period is them wrestling with these thoughts, trying to figure out what is going on? How do I manage this? And then something clicks. And, oh, we're at peace. I don't know if you've ever struggled over a really hard decision. Might be something about moving. What job do I accept? What am I going to do with my life? And then that joyous moment when you made a decision. That feeling of which job do I take? Where do I move? Do I ask this person to marry me? And you make that decision, and the joy and the happiness that comes from that, because you're not stressing anymore, it hits home. And so for suicide, that is even higher. That ramps so much. It's a big warning sign for me. And the moment I get told that someone's got to that point, I'm straight in. I try everything in my power to make a connection with that person. There we go. Up to the next ones. So the next one we have is risky impulsive behaviors. This is especially when someone is in that thought process stage. If someone has a mental illness, depression, anxiety, whatever the illness is, those are the most common ones. That's why I'm using them. We'll see reckless driving. And when we're talking about teenage guys, it's really hard to tell the difference between reckless activity and a desire to take your own life. Increased substance use. The stereotypical guy at the bar drowning in his sorrows. Unprotected, high-risk sexual behavior. This is something, in my practice, I see this a lot with women. This is where their risky behavior comes into play. And you'll notice with all these points that I've shown you, there's a source there. Go back, have a look, check it out. And then we have emotional states. Shame, anxiety, rage, humiliation. Strong emotions? Yeah. Previous suicide attempts, that's a really high indicator. If you have attempted to take your own life before, you are significantly more likely to take your own life. That's the reality of it. Male, woman, trans, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, once you've tried once. It's like a bit of steel rebar. You bend it, that's you attempting suicide. Trying to take your own life. You straighten out that Rio bar, it's never perfectly straight. That's your brain. And if you put pressure on that Rio bar, it's going to snap in that place, right? It's going to bend back in that place. For our mental health, the way our brains work, that's what's going to happen. We're bending that Rio bar in the same place. The final point on my list is a decline in functioning. A really top performer in the workplace, all of a sudden late to work, doesn't do much work, goes home early, gets stroppy with everyone. It's a good indicator. A loving, caring, patient husband, we might call, if there was a workplace, we'd call him a high-performing husband. All of a sudden, doesn't do much around the house. Doesn't pay attention to the things they used to. Distant, withdrawn. Now, it's really important to understand that these are indicators. You may see some, all, or none. They're indicators. But if it's someone you know, and things are out of touch, what do you do about it? The answer is really simple. Ask them. And it's really hard to ask. It's really scary. I don't know how many times I've asked a friend, a client, a family member, hey, those things are a bit off lately. I know people in that situation, they think about taking their own life. Is that what you're thinking about? It's still scary to me. But it's the best way to find out. Because one of a couple of things is going to happen. One, they're going to go, nah, it's not that bad. Just having a rough trot. Okay, cool. Mate, if it does come up, let me know. I'm here for you. You know you can call me anytime. Message me anytime. The second thing that will happen is that they'll go, yeah. I've been having thoughts, but it's not been, that way inclined. And you can have a conversation. Go, look, I'm probably not the one to talk to, but I'm happy to walk with you to the doctor. I'm happy to get on the phone with you to 13, 11, 14 and have a chat with Lifeline. Message the bloke with a beard going, hey, mate, we're having a bit of trouble. Can we have a chat? The third thing that will happen is they'll go, yeah, I am. And I will make a video about how to manage that response later. But the long and short of it is, don't dismiss them. Don't make them feel bad. Just accept it. Go, yeah, okay. That's fair. I see where you're coming from. But the thing to do is to encourage them to get help. That might be a message to the bloke with a beard. We love that stuff. It might be jumping on the phone to Lifeline. It might be nicking down to the hospital, having a chat with the mental health team there. Might be giving Lifeline a call, Beyond Blue a call. And we're going to put all these contact details at the end of the video so you can check them out. And I will do another video where I go into detail because this is a nutshell of a conversation, right? But be there and support them. At no point, when you ask that question, will you put the idea of suicide into their head. That's a myth. It's made up. It's not real. So I've talked a little bit about places you can go. There's a suicide callback service. And I want to put the details right here somewhere because I think this one's the best one to call. If you are in that place, if your friend is in that place, the suicide callback service will get back to you. That's what they do. That's what they're designed for. If they've got a little bit of time up their sleeves, message me. I'm happy. 131114 for Lifeline. Now, one of the next videos to come comes from one of our supporters, Luke. Shout out to Luke. And we're going to talk about how to maintain good mental health. And if you are heading towards that direction of that situation where everything's going wrong and you're the problem, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. How to get yourself out of that rut. I love it when people go and talk to someone. But 35% of men aren't going to do it. As much as people like me are trying to drive that number up and we're going to get help, we want you to talk to us. That I want to stress so hard. But if you're not going to, if you feel like there's something else that you would rather do, I respect that. I'm at peace with that. Hell, I'm a hypocrite. I hate talking to people. But if there is you and you don't want to talk to someone, I want to do a video just for you on what you can do to get yourself out of that rut. Because there are things you can do. And believe it or not, medicine isn't always the thing you're going to get told to do. Medicine can help. I'm on anti-anxiety medication. I'm on antidepressants myself. I use them. I need them because my brain is fried. It's cooked. So I still use these other techniques. I still use these other methods. So we will make a video on that. And again, if anything we have spoken about today has hit a bit too close to home, if anything we have spoken about today is just that little bit too real, please message us. We're available on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and now YouTube. Drop us a line. We want to get in contact with you. And that is my phone telling me I've spoken long enough. I'm going to leave you with the contact details for the services we spoke about. We'll drop some references to what we spoke about in the comments, whatever it is it's called, underneath the video. Peace out, homies. I hope you had a great time listening. I hope you learned something. And if you've got an idea of what we should be talking about, get in touch.